Hello, I'll explain the changes made in this PR. Most of the works done in this PR are about refactoring the service functions. Uh, those functions deal with with databases, database tables. So it was already using the cache feature provided by Next.js and React, but um, there I I found that there would be more improvements to on using both caches. Okay, so let's look into the detail that I made. Okay, so here we are seeing a function called memoize and persist. This is the function that I made to use it on the service functions. Uh, this function this function basically uses uh, cache from a React. This is a function that memoizes the result of a callback function, but only memoizes through the through a request. So, for example, if a function is called with a cache or wrapped with cache, the actual callback function is called once, but 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 if the function is called multiple times, the callback is called only on the first time, and the on the other function calls, the cache, the React cache doesn't call the callback function again, but instead it returns the cached result or a memoized version of data. So it prevents calling the function multiple times through a single request. So this memoize and persist is is calling a cache function first, and as we're using a cache to memoize the result, so that's why I put a name memoize to the function name. Okay, so and inside the cache there's also a callback function, and this persisted callback is actually a function a function wrapped with function called persist, and this persist function is also the function that I made. And let's look into the function. This persist function is pretty similar, but it actually is about using Next.js's unstable cache. It takes a callback function that contains a business logic and also a function name, which is a string. And this persist function actually returns unstable by calling an unstable cache, and it takes the business logic callback, and by resorting to the function name, it creates a key for a cache for a persisted data. It uh, it the key is made. The key will be look like a string of calling a function. So the function name comes first, and after that, uh, the actual arguments passed to the function is going to be passed in as a string and wrapped around a parenthesis. So anyway, this the persist function is responsible for caching the callback function's data, and this data is going to be uh, persisted among the multiple requests So that is actually done by the Next.js's unstable cache. So for example, if one browser calls this function and the persisted data is stored in the data cache layer, the second call from another request or another browser would use the persisted data that is stored in the cache layer, not calling the actual callback. So whenever a user or a program wants to refresh the data or revalidate, it uses a made up key of this one to revalidate the data. I'll show you later. And the main reason of the main reason that I made this function is because that uh, before making this function, whenever I try to apply the cache and unstable cache to the service functions, uh, okay, many of the service function became look like this. I had to wrap unstable cache first and wrap with a cache, but with by passing a sorry by passing arguments here once and another same arguments has to be written here. So I thought this was a redundant work of writing a code, so I decided to make a function that wraps a function both with cache and unstable cache at once. So that's the intention of making this function. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to the next one. Right here is an example of using the memoize and persist function. This function is a get daily scrum update entries count, which basically gets the entries count of by of a specific user, of a specific form, and of a specific date. So I just have to pass in the business logic function uh, as the first argument, and as a second one, I had to pass the function name to specify the cached result. And whenever I pass the function name like this, and the cache key is going to be look like this. So it looks like a function called, but actually it's a string, and I have to pass an actual argument values at the end inside the parentheses. Mm. Okay, so oh, it was right under here. Uh, Wait a second. Um, and the to revalidate the data that the memoized and persisted sorry, to revalidate the data that we've just seen, we have you can call it a revalidate tag function by and uh, pass the key that pass the key like this, and the data will be revalidated, and the callback is going to be called again and refresh the data. And there are some cases that uh, where the service function is not persisted when the function is is related to current user data. So for example, this function, gets entries count of currently logged in user, but it only uses the cache function of a React because this type of data cannot be specified because user can always change. So this kind of service is never wrapped with unstable cache by React to persist across the requests. Okay, so that's all about how the services return data is memoized and persisted. And the next work I've done is that I moved all this database related function, which is a service functions, under the services directory. And in the directory, there are several um, TypeScript modules, and the modules are named after database table names. So, for example, under the services directory and in the orgs.ts, there the all the service functions located in this module are dealing with the orgs table of a database. It's all about it reads data from orgs, also reads data from orgs, and it adds data to orgs. But this function does lots of things, but the main functionality of this service is adding an organization to orgs. So that's how it's organized now. Okay, so that's it for now. Mm, Thanks for listening.